Bulasia and welcome to JUSTPEACE Talanoa BURE at COVID-19, here with Transcend Oceania, building JUSTPEACE communities in changing environment and climate, a journey that we had begun in June 2020, and here with the re-entry of COVID-19 2021, community leaders and youths welcome the opportunity to tell their stories, voice their concerns, and share their priority issues during a time of uncertainty as Fiji grapple with maintaining the spread of coronavirus and at the same time the pre-existing climate change impacts in our islands of Fiji and the Pacific. Promoting the non-isolations of priorities, we engage in Talanoa and share our experiences and lessons learned, and most importantly, how this impacts our values and traditions, and how these changes plays a vital role in paving the way forward. Join us at the Talanoa with the various representatives of our community leaders, with our very own host, Justine Maravu, the Project Officer, Transcend Oceania.
Welcome to the JUSTPEACE Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Bulavinaka Isimeli, Bulavinaka Sereana. We shall start our Talanoa. Could you tell us, what do you most value about your culture? What are some of the traditional practices that the older generation value most from your community? Isimeli?
Vinaka Justine. For me personally, one thing that I value the most about our culture is our family commitment and the work our family links with each other. I grew up, I spent most of my childhood in the village, rural area, even though I grew up in Suva, but most of my childhood was spent on the island where my mom was working. And one thing that I've noticed was the idea of, in Fiji, what we call solevaki, or working together, where men come together to tend to what they do in their daily lives in the village, or where they could be called Veda Vuki. That's no one is left behind to do his farm alone. Everyone in the village comes together. They tend to this farm on this particular date. After that, on the next day, they go to another farm. It's sort of strengthens the relationship, and that's what I like about our culture. And this practice is still practiced up until now. After they've finished all the farms, then there's the feast, usually called Lokatakindoko, where everyone comes to enjoy food with a bowl of cassava, ondalo, and then they have kava celebration. It's sort of a big celebration where everyone comes together. It shows the unique culture that we have as Itoki. I think that's all.
Thank you, Isimeli. You've just really talked about working together as a community and also celebrating the success after working together. For example, in planting Yangwana together, and at the end of the day, you celebrate together. Thank you for that, Sereana.
Well, for me personally, one thing that I value, the most with regards to our culture is our natural resources, and that being our land and our ocean. And the traditional practice that I admire that our elder generations used to practice, something along the line with what Isimeli had mentioned, is communal engagement. For example, when I was in Benga, I was 8 years old, and I saw how the villagers protected their natural resources, their land and their ocean, by engaging, as a community, as a village as a whole. So there were times, say twice in a year, they would do village cleanup. So everyone was involved, from the village headman, the women, the ladies, likewise the children. And also with the ocean, they value it so much that there were times when they placed taboos, just so that they were able to conserve their marine resources, to be able to have sufficient food, for the next period. Yes, and that's what I admire about our culture, our natural resources, and the fact that we engage communally.
Thank you, Sereana. Just to continue with our discussion, so from what you have shared, what are some of the emerging issues of concern that you see in the changes happening today?
Okay, in my case, the issue that I'm facing at the moment, as well as many, other thousands of Fijians, is unemployment, and this is due to the current pandemic, COVID-19, which has led to thousands of job losses, with the borders being closed, and this has impacted our food security. And it's not just us, residing in the urban centers that are feeling the impact of this pandemic, but we have families in the rural areas who are also feeling the pandemic as well. For example, in Lalati, a village in Benga, right now, everyone is struggling to make ends meet because the hotel is, on a complete shutdown. Their land was affected by the last cyclone, Yasa. They are even facing depletion in their fishing zones. So that is probably one of the issues that we're facing in Fiji right now.
Thank you, Sereana. Isimeli?
One of the issues that with my story is the fact of climate change, issue arising from climate change. And I've mentioned the idea of farmers working together, men in the village, with the use of pesticides, with weedicides. This has led to the issues of climate change. Most of them use prefer to use the modern practices. They have completely ignored those traditional practices that our elders have used. This factor has led to a lot of issues with the use of pesticides, weedicides. It could lead to the ocean, causing coral depletion of sea, decrease in the number of fishes. These issues are also being faced in the Lau groups, where by climate change has severely affected us, and most in the islands.
Thank you for sharing, Isimeli and Sereana. You've mentioned that most of us are affected, not just the older people, the women, the youth, and also the children. We have come to the end of our first segment. Stay tuned. We will be back. Welcome again to our JUSTPEACE Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Isimeli and Sereana, we will continue. So looking back 5 to 10 years ago, what has changed and why? For example, climate change has been a great concern in the Pacific region, more so in our coastal and rural communities. And now there is COVID-19. Please share. Isimeli?
Yes, looking back 5 to 10 years ago, a lot has changed with the effects of climate change. And then we have COVID-19 again, which has sort of contributed again to the dilemma we're already facing. One of the issues that I've found out because I usually go back to the village every now and then, to Kandavu, the loss of our sort of culture, the way people react, the way people communicate with each other. Even the farming methods have been changed. What I've also noticed is the loss of our native trees. Even adding that to our culture is the way we speak, even our language. Most of us, we've been far away from the village. We've tend to forget who we are and what makes us our values and everything like that makes you unique as Itoke. And then another thing that I've seen is the practices that has been practiced before. Some of these have changed and sort of in a way to suit our generation, the modern society that we live in right now.
Thank you, Isimeli. Sereana?
Well, bringing things into an environmental perspective related to climate change, like Isimeli has mentioned, there are a lot of changes that have taken place. One that I do remember is the ban of the use of plastics. This was brought into effect on the 1st of January 2020. If we look back 5 to 10 years ago, this wasn't the case. And why did they bring this about? It was to curb the problem of plastic pollution. And, you know, through researchers, they found out that plastic was one of the highest, pollutants here in the country. And not only that, just a few days ago, they've launched the ban of the use of styrofoam. And I feel that, it is a good initiative. At least something is better than, doing nothing. So in addition to that is due to the pandemic, traveling was a luxury, but now it is deemed a threat, So if you are traveling, you have to get vaccinated. But 5 to 10 years ago, you have the freedom to travel wherever you want, as long as you, have your passport or follow proper protocols. But with the pandemic, hanging above our heads now, we've sort of lost the freedom to travel. So yeah, those are basically some of the changes that I could think of.
Thank you. Thank you, Sereana. So a lot of our people are also stuck in the mainland, and they cannot travel back, even locally. This is something that we never faced back then. But now I think a lot of our people, stuck in Suva and even stuck in the West. So, challenges that COVID brings with it. So we'll continue with our discussion. From your experience and based on what you have shared, what are some of the challenges that you see, and probably let's look at some gaps and processes that are working within your, district or province or your traditional community-led processes that you can talk about?
One of the challenges that we face is trying to relay the message across it, trying to create the atmosphere where we are all in line with the information that is being passed on. We are not knowing that we in the rural area, we have very limited information center. Information is passed through only through the radios and so forth. And compared to us living in the urban areas, information is everywhere. That is one thing that I've witnessed, that I've seen on how they are being brought down to layman's term, because information is very important, and the processes that follow is also important. But to bring it down to that level where everyone can understand it, that is another level altogether, because we have different perspectives, we have different ideas, and even trying to, for example, if I am going to a village and trying to change everything, trying to change their mindset, it'll take a lot of time, because first thing that you need to do is to try to bring your level to their level so they can understand the message that you are trying to bring on it. Because yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you. That's a very good point in terms of dissemination of information, and that is understood by our people. Sereana?
Well, this is in relation to the ban of plastics. The gap that I see here is, well, the government has initiated this, this legislation. There is a gap that we have to worry about, which is the significant presence of microplastics in our, ocean. In our ocean, for example, there is a PhD student at the University of the South Pacific who carried out a research, and his research was, focused on microplastics, and they they caught fish, they did research on it, and they found a large amount of plastic in the fishes. So while our government and we, as a nation, are taking the step forward in trying to curb the pollution, we're banning the use of plastic, but there's another existing issue that we have to worry about. While obviously we cannot, solve all these issues overnight, but I'm sure we're taking the right step forward.
Thank you, Sereana. Thank you, Isimeli. Thank you for watching our JUSTPEACE Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. We will be back after this break. Welcome again to our JUSTPEACE Talanoa BURE at COVID-19. Isimeli and Sereana, so we shall continue with our Talanoa. So what recommendations would you suggest for positive change that you and your community would like to see happen? Now that we've talked about our challenges and issues, what would you recommend? Isimeli?
One of the recommendations that I would suggest is the government, various organizations coming down and working together with the community, providing programs, awareness programs on the issue of climate change and COVID-19. If this happens, then everyone will be well informed. As I was speaking earlier on the issue of dissemination of information, if this information is provided to those in the rural area, could be more informative, and easy to be understood at the ground level, so that everyone understands what the information is about. Yeah, I think that is one of the recommendations that I could take up right now.
Thank you, Isimeli. Sereana?
Well, I would recommend that, with climate change, we need to integrate our traditional knowledge with modern practices. We must keep in mind that traditional knowledge and skills, they have been around for years and through generations and generations. And with modern practices, it was just, it is not as old as our traditional skills. So, for instance, if we're talking about sustainability, conserving and managing our natural resources, we need to consult our elders, who are very familiar, with these conservation methods, and tie it in with modern theories, that way, because I feel that traditional knowledge and skills are stable, because they have been around for that long period of time, and our older generations, they survived on that, And another recommendation that I would like to put forward is we need to start teaching the impacts of climate change at grassroots level. In my case, I started diving into this issue 10 years ago, and that was my first year in uni. But I feel that the Ministry of Education, could come up with strategies to impose this into, primary school and secondary school curriculums, so that our children can be educated at an early level, rather than, being forced to learn about it, when they've, gone past that age. And also for parents at home, you can, start teaching your children sustainable ways of living, because at the end of the day, our actions today will have detrimental effects for the future. So yeah, pretty much two of the recommendations I could
just to add on Sereana, on what she mentioned, the issue of Talanoa and consultation, where everyone comes together and talk on this issue. One point she mentioned is the consulting of elders, which is very important. They have been through the time, they've seen what happens, and if we don't take that step of consulting our elders, we'll be lost, and we will continue to be lost in our journey in the fight of towards climate change and with this COVID-19.
Thank you, Isimeli. I would just like to link it back to what you shared in the beginning on Sala Salavaki, which is something that the elders continue to reinforce to us. So now that we're going through COVID-19, a lot of our communities are strengthening that value of Sala Salavaki, the idea of coming together and working together, which is something that is working and something that we are holding on to very dearly now. Is there anything else that you would like to share to our viewers? Sereana?
Yes, you know, we are living amidst a pandemic, and I'm sure none of us, you know, are happy with the current state of our country. We want to get out of our houses, we want to go and visit our families, our friends. So I urge you to, you know, if you know that you're fit to get vaccinated, please do come forward, get your jabs, because I believe that vaccination is the only way that we can, you know, tackle this pandemic and will allow us to move forward. Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you, Sereana. Isimeli?
I'd just like to add on, the onus is on us. It's on us if we are to move forward and to fight this pandemic and what's happening around us, we need to come together and work together as one, bringing the idea of Solovaki again, without leaving no one behind. No one need, if we practice this, then we'll surely move forward and we'll be able to go back to our normal that we were at before.
Thank you, Isimeli. Thank you, Sereana. And thank you to the viewers for watching our program, JUSTPEACE Talanoa Mbure at COVID-19.
As we conclude our JUSTPEACE Talanoa Mbure at COVID-19, we are reminded once again to enable people living just peace and non-violence in Oceania. We need to be both mindful and maintain safety protocol. Mask up, home isolations may be tough while caring for each other, and at the same time, our need for peace and stability within the safety of our homes, communities, and the nation at large. I'm Adi Vasulevu. Join us at the same time next week. Inakuwa karibu.